Hi, I'm Brent Johnson, and today we're continuing our Kansas City trip. We've come across the state line. We're in Kansas now, on the Kansas side of the city. With me is Dr. Rosie Kaufman. You're the organist here at Rainbow Mennonite Church.
I am.
And this fantastic organ was not built for Rainbow Mennonite Church, correct?
That is right. It was built in 1869 for the Woodside Presbyterian Church in Troy, New York.
So 1869, I think this is the oldest organ in
Yes.
Kansas City now?
By 50 years. Oh, yes.
Because there wasn't much in Kansas City in the 1860s, really, was there?
Not organ-wise. Yes, that's right.
So rescued, this was an Organ Historical Society find, correct?
It was.
Tell me about that. What was your church's situation?
It's quite an amazing story. In the early 2000s, the Mennonite congregation took possession of this building. We had actually shared the building with a Methodist and Disciples of Christ congregation, and it was a shared space, but eventually those other two congregations dwindled and closed and deeded the building to the Mennonites. And so in order to make the building handicapped accessible and to make it really function for the Mennonite congregation, we started a major renovation project in the early 2000s. And part of that involved, to make the building handicapped accessible, we needed to lower the platform that was at the front of the sanctuary. And that meant taking out the 1930 Reuter 5-rank instrument that was here. And really that had served well, but it was at the end of its life. And quite honestly, it probably wasn't sufficient for supporting the robust Mennonite singing that we needed.
5 ranks is a mini.
That's right.
Especially if it's at the end of its life when things are starting to get a little iffy.
Exactly.
Right. Well, it served well for many years.
Right. And it was parts of it were repurposed to other places, so it was good to pass that along. So I had been looking for years for something that would be suitable. And this, I found this on the Clearinghouse website. It had only been posted for a couple of days. And I could just see looking at it that it was going to be a gem. Anything that had been from 1869 that was still in its original location and in mostly original condition. And the other, it had been cared for by the Andover Organ Company for its entire life. I mean, the predecessors of Andover. And so I knew that it probably had a good frame and a good structure and would be worth it. So another organist from the congregation and I traveled to Albany, New York, and John Bishop met us there and took us to Troy to visit the instrument, which was in a building that had already been closed. Parts of the building were already starting to actually, some of the walls had actually come in already. But there was still electricity to the organ, and we sat and played it, and just immediately fell in love with the sound, even in this building that was really crumbling around it. The last pastor, who had served for the congregation, met us there. And so we found this organ, and we asked the pastor, I said, we gave him $100 and said, would you hold this for us? And he said, yes, I will honor that. So we were working with John Bishop. It turned out that the instrument was actually not as available as the Presbytery of Albany thought it would be. And this is a long story, but in 1869, Henry Burden and Erastus Corning, two industrial leaders in the Hudson River Valley in New York, were involved in a patent lawsuit. And to settle that lawsuit, they decided, as part of the settlement, that they would provide for a place of worship for their workers.
Okay.
So Henry Burden donated the building, the funds for the building, and Erastus Corning Glassware, donated the property to build the church on this lovely hill overlooking the river in Troy, the Hudson River. Church was built, furnished, and used until the early 2000s, when finally the congregation had dwindled to the point that they couldn't support the building anymore. So it was the congregation closed, and the building was turned over to the Presbytery of Albany to disperse with the building. They found a buyer who was going to turn it into an Airbnb. In the process of that transfer, there was a deed search done, and it was discovered that there was a reverter clause on the deed that said if the building was no longer used as a church, it had to revert to the heirs of the original donors. And that was a problem, because then they had to go find all the heirs of Burden and Corning. And they found, and all of them said, we don't need this, please take care of it, except for two.
Oh, really?
Christopher Burden is his name, and Ada Gates Patton. And they said, oh, this is a lovely property. We would like this property. Presbytery of Albany at that point said, okay, you can have the land, you can have the building, but the contents belongs to the presbytery. So what do you think the organ was considered? Was it contents or part of the building?
Yeah, that's always an eternal question, isn't it?
It actually went to the courts in New York State. The initial judge said, oh, the organ is part of the contents. Of course, the presbytery can sell the organ. And the heirs contested that and appealed that. It went all the way to the New York Supreme Court. And it was appealed twice. The great thing about that was that gave us time to raise the funds, to purchase the organ, and it gave us time to get the renovation to the point where we could house the organ once it got here.
So you were planning for it, even though it wasn't guaranteed that you were going to get it.
Yeah, because we were quite certain that it was contents. And in fact, when we went, when the decision was finally made that yes, by the Supreme Court in New York that it was contents, I went with 3 volunteers from here, flew to Albany, met with 3 workers from the Organ Clearinghouse to help us take it out. And as we took it apart, there was nothing that attached the organ to any wall anywhere in the building. So it really
freestanding.
It really was contents. And as we were taking it apart, actually one of the heirs showed up and told us we had to put it back together. And luckily, the Presbytery of Albany had an attorney there who stayed with us. The Historic Preservation Group in Troy did not appreciate that we were taking this instrument, and they protested the whole thing. There were news crews there. I have never been part of a protest, been the object of a protest before. But it has been a great story. We did get it packed into a semi, and we took it to one of Michael Quimby's warehouses outside of Warrensburg, where we subcontracted with Richard Hamar to come help us do the restoration. Volunteers went from the church and worked. Richard would teach us what to do. We would work for several months.
Wow.
And then he would come back and teach us the next thing.
Done with members of the church and volunteer labor.
And what is so wonderful about that, all the people who had their hands in it, the high school kids washed the pipes in the big bathtubs. We had several people who their sole task was cleaning the swell shades, cleaning the pipes. Is that now when folks have guests that come to the church, everyone brings them and shows them the organ and says, this is what I did on the instrument.
They all had a hand in it.
Obituaries sometimes say, he was proud of the time he spent working on the organ.
Wow.
And so there's this broad ownership, I think, of the instrument.
It's amazing. I mean, just a fantastic story and so many hands involved in getting it here.
Yeah.
I have yet to stand in front of an organ that's been part of a Supreme Court decision, that's fantastic. Well, our thanks to the New York Supreme Court for bringing, we didn't say, this is an E&GG Hook organ,
right? Made
in Boston in 1869. So a real rarity for here in the Midwest, but a lovely, beautiful instrument. Now, was the facade, is this essentially what it looked like in New York, or was there work done
We did not do any painting to the facade. We think that the shiny gold, the bright red, and the bright blue were probably added in the 1920s. That's Richard's best guess. But the dark brown, the dark maroon, and the stenciling is all original from 1869. That's all, it's all milk paint. When we first saw the instrument, the swell shutters, we thought that they were just solid brown. It was so dark because the church had been heated with coal dust, and those hadn't been cleaned for probably 80 decades.
Nobody could get in there to do it.
And so we cleaned that, and we did have to repaint the frame around the swell box. But other than that, All the paint is original.
That's amazing.
And we did not refinish any of the dark wood either.
It looks beautiful and it fits in here amazingly well. I want to hear what it sounds like now.
Sure.
We mentioned this. We talked about there's 19 ranks of pipes on 16 stops. So I would like to, I guess, just start with the grate. Well, it's the grate's here in front, and then the swell box is back behind that and above it a little. So let's just start with what's the grate. Is our facade speaking?
Yes.
Okay.
There is a lovely 8-foot principal. All right here.
Yeah, big bold principal sound there on the open diapason. All right, and then
There's an 8-foot melodia. The melodia is shares its bass with the dulciana.
Okay.
So it's a tenor C. It's kind of a French horny kind of melodia.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
another big warm sound. Again, it's that 19th century American sound, very full and warm. All right.
A nice little quiet string, relatively.
And does that turn into a stopped flute on the bass there with the
Yeah, it
shared bass?
shares.
Not too different.
And if it's with the melodia,
Okay, and then from there?
and there's also a 16-foot. Which is tenor C.
Okay.
Tenor C. 4-foot principal. And a 2-foot. And a 2-rank mixture, which is original to the stop list, but it's a very interesting disposition of the mixture that is unusual. I think it's perhaps common for hooks, but unusual for other instruments even of its time, I think.
Yeah.
So the middle octave,
Breaks down and then back up again.
well, it breaks, but it's in unison.
Is it complete unison in the middle?
It's complete unison in
Oh,
the
that's
middle.
right.
So there are fifths. I'll do it again.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure I've experienced that before.
Right. And I know that when we had the pipes looked at, there was nothing done to revoice the pipes, but
It was clear that was the original.
it's very clear that that's the original. I mean, at first I worried that we had gotten the pipes out of order when we
Right,
took them
right.
out, but according to the toe boards, according to the chest, according to the placement, according to the markings on the pipes, that's absolutely original.
Okay.
And actually, it's, I think, a reason that we can still play counterpoint on this 19th century instrument without it getting muddy.
Yeah, because it's not getting too dark and clashy in the middle. It's
Right,
nice and
that the
clear.
middle
Huh.
octave is cleaner.
Well, somebody who knows more about it can comment and tell us if that's something that Hook did or other builders did. But all right, that's interesting. Let's hear the principal chorus then, from 8 up to the mixture. Just building it up. So let's do it one
Okay.
at a time. Let's start with the 8 again.
I'll just let you pull them out
Okay,
as we
sure.
go. trumpet on.
Okay. It's a big full sound.
Yeah, and then if we add the 16 to it.
I want to hear the trumpet by itself there, just see how it big and bright.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, that is a lovely, great division. It's got plenty of sound. It fills this room really well.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's go over to the swell now. All of the swell is enclosed in a box in there. So
It is.
tell me what we've got.
We have a stopped flute, which is a and a corallophone. And they share their bass. So it's another way of, it's part of the reason we can have 19 ranks fitting in this small space.
Keeping those 8-foot shared. Yeah.
Is all the shared 8-foots. So if I start with the flute and add the bass, and then I'll start with the corallophone with the same bass.
So just like on the great, you have to draw that bottom octave as a separate. It doesn't. They don't automatically just
Right.
divert to that.
Right.
That's different from how a lot of people handled it. But okay, I guess it gives you the option if you don't want to risk playing a different sounding bass, or I'm not really sure. It was
Well,
just an
it-
easier way to do it, I suppose.
It gives the option of playing if, you know, I imagine it would help someone who didn't use the pedals very much.
It's possible. Yeah.
Because
you
you
can
could-
add that bass to
You could add the
bottom octave.
bass, yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
So I
Okay.
think there might be musical advantages to it as
Yeah.
well as just the organ building part of
Okay.
it.
Interesting.
An open diapason. And I like to contrast that one with the one on the grate.
Yeah, they're similar in color, but very different power levels.
Right, exactly. A 4-foot harmonic flute. And a 4-foot violone. Just both, I think, really nice, clean,
Yeah.
clear sounds.
Very nice.
And then an oboe. And that is also a split stop, so you have to draw another draw knob to get the bottom octave. But what that allows you to do is have just the bottom octave of the oboe along with something else. And so you can and to have a different color on one manual.
Definitely. Or if you couple the swell to the pedal and you have just that bass oboe drawn, but you're playing up here on the swell, then you can get the oboe and the pedal on that bottom. So,
Exactly.
all right, okay. A way of adding some stops to borrowing some stops to the pedal.
Right,
That
right.
you might not, all right, without all the extra activity that it takes. All right,
Yeah.
okay.
So it gives
That makes a little more sense.
It gives remarkable flexibility, without having any kind of combination action, which it did have a combination action when it was built.
Mm-hmm. Oh, really?
A mechanical combination
Had some
action with
pedals.
a couple of levers, but we chose not to rebuild that.
Okay.
And the other thing that was changed was that it had a hitch-down swell. There's still a slot for it over
yep,
here. But we think, again, that the Andover company, maybe in the 1920s, made it balanced. swell
I see.
and put a new kickboard on. So.
Okay, very nice. Well, what do we have in the pedal?
2 stops.
Okay.
Just a 16-foot stop. And a big 8-foot flute.
Okay.
And 1 draw knob that was the bellows signal.
bellows signal.
Doesn't do anything. But another thing that I love that I think is unique and wonderful for the hooks is that they're different colors.
Mm-hmm.
The pedal draw knobs are a different wood than the grate draw knobs.
That's-
And even the couplers, the grate to pedal, swell to pedal, and swell to grate, those are a different
Give you that visual clue to quickly find them.
wood.
Well, they knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
Well, this is fantastic. I'd like to hear a little bit of it and see what we can do in the room. So there's not a lot to see in this little instrument. We've taken the panels off here. Looking in, we can see some of the mechanics of the instrument, some of the wind lines, and there is the double rise regulator, all nicely restored. You can see pedal trackers on the floor. They come up from the pedals and then go out either direction. There are pedal pipes on either side of the case. You can see where the trackers run up. And the pedal chest is suspended up there, and you can see the pipes on it actually are facade pipes. They speak out into the church directly. Now going behind, there's a little bit of a walk space. We can look in, we can see the back side of the regulator and squeeze our way through. There are the new swell trackers going up. And we can see the grate trackers. They fan out from the keyboards to the grate chest, which is right there above us. And there's a narrow little walkboard to get to those pipes. There's some more stop action. And continuing on across. You can see the stops from the other side, and again another look at the swell trackers right in our face. And there are the pedal pipes on the other side of the case. Those don't speak out into the room. There's our swell box up there, accessed from behind via a ladder, which we have, but the space back here is very tight. This is looking in the front. From the other side, there's some very narrow little steps you can use to get up to the walkboard, and that would give you access to the grate on this side.
This part of the organ is actually something that we had to come up with in Troy. The organ was on the floor, and the trackers went underneath. And so in order to put it here at Rainbow on a flat floor, we had to use I believe it's a floor joist that the organ is actually resting on. in order to, that's why the bench is on a platform, to make room for the action and the trackers going underneath.
Well, Dr. Rosie Kaufman, thank you so much for demonstrating the ENGG hook, the oldest organ in Kansas City. It's been fantastic to come here and hear it in this room. It just fits the room perfectly. And was anything done tonally once it came in?
This is the way it came to us.
This is the way Hook voiced
Yeah.
it. So it's
Yeah.
and it sounds must have been a similar sized room, I assume, or something, because it just works in here so well.
Yeah. One odd thing is that it is tuned to A454.
Oh,
So it uses the Boston tuning,
Yeah,
exaggerated,
okay.
Which makes it difficult to play with other
I
instruments.
can imagine.
And we didn't pick up on that when we.
Just to pretend that there's nothing wrong.
Yeah.
As long as everybody can still sing with it and enjoys it, then that's
Right.
great.
But we didn't change any of that. That was important.
It's
Yeah.
beautiful to see, and I only recently learned about it and didn't know that this piece of history was here in Kansas. So thank you for all of your hard work and keeping it here and bringing it to Kansas City. I hope you've enjoyed this. If you did, please give us a thumbs up down below. There's some information about the church, about the organ, and of course the Organ Clearinghouse, who helps preserve instruments like these, find them new homes, find them people that will take care of them. So there's a link down in the description for that. Down in the link, you'll also find a link to our website where you can click and become a sponsor of the Organ Media Foundation. We rely on our sponsors to bring us to places like these and to see great organs like these. We still have yet one more organ coming from Kansas City, so make sure you're subscribed to our channel and click the bell so you have notifications when new videos are coming out. Till then, you can always find streaming classical organ music on our 3 streaming stations, organlive.com, Positively Baroque, and The Organ Experience. Thank you again for having us here. This has been wonderful to see, wonderful to hear you play. Until next time, I'm Brent Johnson. Thanks for watching.